The Conservative Party of Canada's new leader, Pierre Poilievre, well, he just ran away with it. Of the 338 ridings, Pierre won 330 of them. He secured such a monumental win that you have to wonder, what's it going to look like in the next federal election when he goes up against Justin Trudeau? Or will he? Will it be Justin Trudeau? I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Brian Lilley and Jamil Jivani. Brian, there were some changes that the Tories had to make to their announcement, but my goodness, it was just such a crushing defeat for Pierre Poilievre against the other candidates. So what's next?
What's next is getting ready for a general election. And the most frequent question that I was asked from the time Pierre Poilievre announced is, could he beat Justin Trudeau in a general election? And my answer remains the same as it did from February when he launched. Yes, absolutely he could, but it depends. There's a lot of caveats. How long till the next election? What's the ballot question? What kind of campaign do both sides run? Because while I absolutely think that Poilievre could win, I think that Trudeau could also win. And there's a lot of factors between now and when we vote that will help determine that. I will say, though, that if voters get to see the warm family man with great policy ideas, but the warm family man that we saw on Saturday night, if they get to see that Pierre, that's the Pierre that reaches out and connects with the suburban moms, the swing voters that the Conservatives need to win. They don't need to change their policies. They just need to make sure that voters see smiling Pierre, not angry Pierre, because he'll turn off the swing voters.
Jamil, one of the lines I like to use is during the federal election, it's a time when the National Press Gallery tells Conservatives to act like Liberals in order for them to get elected. That's not something that will fly this time around with, I think, Pierre Poilievre. Like, he has a very clear ability to articulate his message. He is, he's very good at standing up for those principles that he believes in, and that he believes that the Conservative Party of Canada should be standing for in the next election and an eventual government if they win. How do you sort of measure this up? We know that Justin Trudeau's sunny ways are way gone. We know that that's over. But in the last federal election, we saw that it was the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. It didn't work for the first few weeks of the campaign, but as things went on, it certainly did. Justin Trudeau's Liberals were able to scare enough voters against Tories that they really just would rather give them a minority than give the Conservatives an opportunity. How does that change in this next election, particularly with the fact that Pierre Poilievre is quite polarizing himself?
Yeah, people say Pierre Poilievre is polarizing, but I think part of why they say that is because he has a level of enthusiasm around him that hasn't been the case for a conservative politician in a long time. And I think with enthusiasm comes polarization, because people are excited about you. They want to debate your ideas. They want to talk about you. You're the center of attention. And that inevitably means people will have different opinions. That doesn't always mean that they won't come around to wanting to support you or be moved by your ideas, though. And I think that's what the Poilievre team has to keep in mind. They've got a level of enthusiasm to build on. And this is what's different about them in past campaigns. If they change too much of their style, if they change too much of their message, if they change how they communicate, they risk losing that enthusiasm. And I think the fact that he won over 2/3 of the first ballot votes on this past weekend is evidence of just how decisive the enthusiasm around him can be. I think there is an opportunity to learn something from the successful campaigns that the Trudeau team has put together, in that Trudeau unapologetically campaigns with his base. He speaks to them, he rallies with them, he gives them a lot of the talking points they want to hear, but then he also tries to expand beyond that enough to win an election. And that is how I think Conservatives have to think too. Instead of thinking about it as an either or proposition, either you're talking to your base or you're talking to the swing voter, the key is trying to figure out what is the message that resonates with both. camps. And I think that that's the challenge that is in front of Pierre's team. And fortunately for them, if the Jagmeet Singh, Justin Trudeau deal continues and they've got 3 years until an election, that's a long time to build that relationship and that credibility with the swing voters and with the base. And I think that's the recipe for success.
Brian, on the victory night speech that Pierre Poilievre gave, a lot of people sort of said, if this guy shows up for the election, this is going to be, Justin Trudeau's got to be on his game. He's got to figure out how he can work around someone who is as articulate as Pierre Poilievre. When Justin Trudeau comes up with sort of these weird word salads, drink box water juice things, all of that, Poilievre is very clear, very succinct, very Socratic, actually. But he also was personal, and I think that's part of a side that we haven't seen with him. And I thought that was really an interesting touch, and one that I certainly hope we see more of. But the wall against the Conservatives is already, building itself. One of them, of course, is the National Press Gallery. We saw the tussle with him with David Aiken from Global and Pierre Poilievre earlier this week. Now we're seeing headlines that are talking about those that donated to the trucker convoy are similar to those same people that donated to the Conservative Party. Yeah, cutting through all this noise, does any of that stuff matter?
Look, I saw that headline about the who donated to the trucker convoy, and it's similar to a different one I saw last week about people who donated to the Quebec Conservative Party. And I tweeted out at the time, I wish for the day that the Parliamentary Press Gallery would hold the government to account the way they hold any conservative opposition party to account. That is always going to be an issue. I will caution the Poilievre camp, though. Be careful about campaigning against the entire gallery and painting them all with the same brush. I've been beating the drum that the gallery is a liberal leaning, and I don't mean left leaning, I mean capital L liberal leaning organization for years and years. And I still believe that, but you're going to need some people in the media at certain points. So he's got to be careful about campaigning and fundraising off the gallery, lest you turn off everyone. There are some straight shooters, and there's some good journalists in every shop up there. He's got to be careful on that, because he's going to need them to get his message out. People need to see that story that he told about him, about his family. They need to see his wife. I know that. I know that Pierre. I know that side of him. I know that story because I've been around him for close to 20 years. But the general public doesn't. And if they just see what the media wants to show of angry Pierre, that won't work. It's why after the first debate where he showed up really angry, it might have been the one that you moderated, Jamil. I said, that guy can't show up on stage because that guy will turn off voters. If you went to one of Pierre's rallies, you saw a smiling, engaging man that was laughing and telling stories and explaining things really well. That's the guy that needs to get out. And sometimes he's going to have to get out through the national media, through the Parliamentary Press Gallery. Yeah, they're going to be against him for the most part, but if he gets a fair shot, a lot of things could change.
I'm going to give you the last word, Jamil. One of the tactics Conservative politicians at all levels, provincial, federal, they go above the media and use their own sort of media they go above the mainstream media, and now we're using social media platforms, direct voter contact, going above the heads. And I think that frustrates mainstream media. It certainly does, us in a way. But that's how they feel they can only get their message out unfiltered, rather through this lens of, the big L press gallery, the big L liberal press gallery. If you were advising the Poilievre campaign, the coveted spots are in the 905. We know that. That's how you win. That's how you win a general election in Canada nationally. What do you say? What to them? What is the message that he has to drive home?
Well, certainly his campaign's done a good job of going around the media up till this point. And I think Brian is absolutely correct that you don't want to paint the media with too broad of a brush. As Brian said, there are good journalists. I think the success of the Poilievre campaign shows that it needs to be a relationship of mutual respect. that they need the credibility of being able to speak to conservatives, just as the Poilievre campaign will need them to speak to a wider audience as well. And if media continues to behave like it's politically biased, their credibility will go down as well. It's not just that one side needs the other. I think there's a mutual need there for respect and collaboration. And my hope is that that's, Pierre Poilievre's success will get other people to see that on the media side. But what I would say in terms of the 905 is, it's really about building relationships with people, spending the time in these communities. What I've seen over and over again from conservative leaders is they get elected, then they hire a bunch of outreach staff who will show up to community events, like in the neighborhoods I grew up in North York and Brampton. And then whenever the leader changes, they just switch those staff and a new person shows up. And there's no authenticity. There's no real connection between the party and between these communities. The Liberals do that much, much better. It's about just spending time with people, understanding who they are, what they care about, and realizing that like liberal identity politics doesn't speak to these communities. So if you want to reach them, you've got to spend the time so they know who you are and they trust you and they believe your promises. So that's the biggest piece of advice I would give to the Poilievre campaign is spend time in the places you need to win, get to know these people, show them your character, because they're not relying on global news or CTV in many cases for their impression of Pierre and his family. They want to see it directly for themselves.
And the Tories have a bulging checking account that's going to be able to fight back against so many of these things. And for all of those conservatives that said they were going to run for the exits, if Pierre Poilievre won the leadership, well, he did lose one MP who has now decided to sit as an independent. But it seems like the rest of the party members are staying put. Log on to Facebook and Twitter. Let us know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and log on to the TorontoSun.com for more stories like this and others that you won't find covered anywhere else.